Dealers, need more used cars fast? With Kelly Blue Book Instant Cash Offer, you can connect directly with local sellers to win more inventory, improve look to book, and lower cost to market. That's the instant advantage. Request a demo today at b2b.kbb.com/ICO.
Welcome to this weekend drive edition of Daily Drive for the first week of June 2026. I'm Kellen Walker. This week, we saw UAW workers walk off the job at the supplier formerly known as American Axle. More trade and tariff developments ahead of next month's USMCA review, and we got a look at May sales. Here to talk with me all about it is Michael Martinez, who covers Ford and the UAW for us at Automotive News. Mike, how you doing, buddy?
Doing great, Kel. How are you?
Doing all right. And Hannah Lutz, assistant managing editor here at Automotive News. Hannah, welcome back to Weekend Drive.
Hi, Kyle. Thanks for having me.
All right. So lots to get into this week. Let's start with the labor story that's got the most writing on it for GM. Mike, the UAW walked off the job at the Dow Corporation this week, formerly American Axle, at a plant in Three Rivers, Michigan, that makes axles for the Silverado and Sierra. UAW President Shawn Fain made it plain: no contract, no axles. How serious is this, and what's the leverage play here for both sides?
It could be very serious depending on how long this lasts, because all those axles, most of them go into GM trucks, heavy duty and some light duty as well. And as we know, those are the money makers. GM's trying to catch Ford right now because Ford has some pickup issues, so they're trying to take advantage, and this will make it harder for them to do so. But you talk about leverage, and honestly, in situations like this, the leverage is almost the same thing, and it's staying out as long as possible. For the union, you want to break the company and really get them to come to the bargaining table and give you what you're asking for by holding out your labor. But for the company, you want to keep the workers out as long as possible because they're not getting those regular paychecks. And traditionally, a lot of times contracts are up in the fall, and the longer you stay out, the worse the weather gets. Morale starts to wear a bit the longer you go on. So you get more leverage at the negotiating table. Obviously, a different situation here as we get into summer. It actually might be kind of nice hanging out on the picket line from a weather perspective. So I don't know that that incentive is there. But once these workers go a couple weeks without a regular paycheck, if they don't have savings, it may start to hurt. So again, same thing. You want to stay out as long as possible. None of that bodes well for GM.
Now, Hannah, as a former GM reporter, how worried do you think the folks at GM headquarters are, considering this could threaten their moneymakers, the Silverado and the Sierra?
They're probably pretty worried. I mean, this is yet another disruption to production, and it could be another cost for them amid tariffs and all the other things the industry has gone through over the past several months and years. But the supplier is trying to keep going. They began stockpiling the axles at offsite warehouses back in January. That's what our colleague Kurt Nagel reported. And they have about 2 weeks of inventory. So that puts them in a good spot, at least temporarily. And then this really jumped out at me that about 250 management level employees have been assigned to work 12-hour days to keep making these parts. So clearly they are thinking about their customer and trying to make sure these pickups can be built for as long as possible until a contract is renegotiated. And the strike could halt assembly of more than 1,000 trucks a day at GM's Flint assembly plant. So that, I'm sure it's on everybody's minds, and they're trying to come to a solution quickly.
Now, Mike, does this feel like the strike could get resolved quickly, or is it a longer haul?
No, it doesn't. And I think it's at least going to last those 2 weeks or whatever stockpile GM has, because if we know anything about Shawn Fain, when he goes on strike, he knows what it takes to hurt the company. Think back to when he struck the Detroit 3. He knew what the choke points were. He knew what plants would do the most damage the fastest to get what his side wanted. And, Kel, I was thinking about this under the perspective of, could this be a sneak preview of what we might see with the Detroit 3 in 2028? But the more I thought about it, the more I think this is sort of a throwback to that 2023 strike. Because you look at this, it's about getting better wages and health benefits for these supplier workers. I think they're making $22 bucks an hour, which quite frankly, they might as well go to McDonald's, make that much. I think they're asking for 30, which would still be on the low end. And we know that Sean Fain held out for significantly higher wage rate for the Detroit Three. He's going to do the same thing here, I'm pretty sure. So I think everybody should expect a pretty bitter and long fight.
Fain has sort of become like a strike strategist of sorts. He's, like you said, like always picking at the really hot button topics, the things that will hurt the automaker the most.
And don't forget, he's up for re-election in a couple months this fall. So going on strike, staying on strike, winning a good deal will help boost him politically. So he has extra incentive to make this hurt.
If he doesn't get reelected, Mike, could you see him getting like a consulting gig?
I'm sure he'll be fine either way. There was talk, before the last election that if Biden won again or if Kamala Harris won, that he would seek a job in the administration. So he's very politically active with the UAW. So maybe that would be the route he goes.
So Hannah, this week also brought another wrinkle in the trade picture. The Trump administration is pushing for 82% North American content and USMCA with a 50% US specific floor, and Canada may not even have a seat at the negotiating table. Then on top of that, a new tariff proposal came out with a carve out for autos, but not a complete one. How are you making sense of all of this heading into the July 1st formal review?
Yeah, Cal, there's a lot to unpack there, a lot going on with trade as usual. So the Trump administration asked Mexico to raise the level of regional content in North American built vehicles to 82% to qualify for the preferential trade deal. And they want 50% of that value produced in the US. So reports suggested that the US would put that same requirement in front of Canada as a sort of take it or leave it. And, although the formal negotiations start July 1st, there's a lot of informal talks going on. So this is where this came out of an informal talk. And those content rules would be a big change. The current rule is that 40% of passenger car content must be made in plants that pay at least $16 an hour, which effectively eliminates Mexico. So that means 40% must come from the US and Canada. So we'd go from 40% made in some combination of the US and Canada to 50% exclusively made in the US. So that would be a really big shift for Canada. And we'll know more about all of this after the USMCA negotiations when they officially start July 1st. Separately, the Trump administration announced new duties on 60 trading partners. So I'll start with how the auto industry mostly sidesteps this development, and then I'll explain how some parts are affected. Vehicles and many auto parts that fall under sectoral tariffs or the Section 232 tariffs are exempt from this update. Steel, aluminum, and copper are also exempt because they fall under sectoral tariffs. And products that comply with the USMCA rules, which we just referenced, are also exempt. But imports of auto products not covered by the parts tariffs, that could be electronics, interior materials, subassemblies, those would be subject to the proposed duties of 10% or 12.5%. And those could start in July. So it's a lot of details there, and a lot of different scenarios and situations depending on the vehicle and the part. But for the most part, the auto industry is unaffected by this update.
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack. Mike, the affordability piece is striking to me. Now, our own John Irwin reported this week that more than 2/3 of sub $35,000 vehicles are built outside the US, and international automakers built nearly 9 out of 10 affordable vehicles made domestically. If these content rules tighten, where does this leave buyers at the lower end of the market?
Well, we were just talking about the UAW. You want to know why all those sub $35,000 vehicles are built outside the US? Because they don't have to pay their workers $40 an hour and give them platinum healthcare plans and all that overtime down there. There's different labor standards, different labor rules. So that's why. But the upshot is, if what the administration wants in terms of boosting that American content goes into play, we may lose a lot of those sub $35,000 vehicles. And for anybody who is a proponent of free trade, this is not a good start to this review period. Allegedly, reportedly, what's happening, what the administration wants, it just makes things a lot more complicated. And automakers, Ford building the Maverick would have to really reconsider, is it worth it? Because they'd have to boost the US content significantly. That would raise the price. Should we just bring it here anyway, or should we just jack up the price 5 or 10 grand? GM has a lot of their low cost vehicles there too. So it's not a good start if you're a consumer looking to lower the price of your monthly payment on a new vehicle in the future. And also, that one point you mentioned, that Canada isn't really at the table in terms of this specific ask, that's not good either, because they're going to sort of isolate Canada, and the industry gets a lot of its parts from up there. So a not inspiring start to what could be a critical period right now.
And I think it's notable too that this report that John wrote about came from Autos Drive America. It was their research, and they represent international automakers that sell in the U.S. and that build in the U.S. So like Toyota, Honda, Volkswagen, et cetera. And they are coming out and saying to the administration, like, please keep USMCA as is for the benefit of everyone.
All right, coming up, we'll talk May sales and a Ford Filson collaboration that had Mike itching to write a column about it. That's next on Weekend Drive.
Electric pickups were supposed to be a breakout segment, but so far, the results have been underwhelming. So who actually wants an electric truck?
Pickup buyers are typically not going to be the type of people that are excited about electric vehicles.
On this week's episode of the Automotive News Shift podcast, we hear from EV and charging analyst Lauren McDonald of Chargenomics. He breaks down why big electric pickups have struggled, why things might be different for a smaller, more efficient electric truck, and why high gas prices could boost hybrids more than full EVs in the near term. I'm Molly Boygon. Join me on Shift, available this Sunday wherever you get your podcasts.
Dealers, need more used cars fast? You're not alone. And waiting for inventory to show up isn't much of a strategy. That's where Kelley Blue Book Instant Cash Offer comes in. Backed by Kelley Blue Book's 100 years of trusted valuation expertise, Instant Cash Offer connects you directly with local sellers so you can win more inventory right when you need it. And because the experience is transparent and consistent from the first click, it helps build trust early, before a customer ever walks through your doors. That trust matters. It sets expectations up front, reducing friction in the appraisal process. What that means for your team is more control over how inventory comes onto your lot and more time focused on selling cars, not chasing them. It's a smarter way to source inventory in today's competitive market, and that's the instant advantage. If you're ready to connect with local sellers, win more inventory opportunities, and lower cost to market with an approach dealers rely on, check out Kelley Blue Book Instant Cash Offer. Request a demo today at b2b.kbb.com/ICO.
Welcome back to Weekend Drive. I'm Kellen Walker with Michael Martinez and Hannah Lutz. So let's get into May sales. The first monthly gain of 2026, but not exactly a barn burner. Global Data's preliminary numbers show light vehicle sales were just up 0.6%, with fleet doing most of the heavy lifting. Retail was barely up at all. Hannah, what's your read on where the market is right now?
Yeah, those aren't very strong results, even though it's a little bit of a lift. Last year, there was some momentum as consumers tried to get ahead of the tariff price increases potentially, and at the end of the EV tax credit. Now we're seeing this big cooling, really, as the price of everything climbs and people have to budget. Molly Boygan reported this week that auto sales have had really a relatively minor impact considering the inflation hitting a 3-year high and overall consumer confidence declining. So for now, the auto industry could be kind of cushioned because people need cars. But how long can this really last? I think that is what everybody is waiting to find out in this industry.
Mike, Ford was a drag, down 14% on weaker truck and SUV volume. What's going on there?
Ford's relatively simple. They obviously got rid of the Escape crossover, which is a big volume driver at the end of last year, so that's hurting them. Truck sales are down because of that continued fallout from the Novelis fire last September that we've talked about a lot. So sort of you expect, the number that they put out. Ford says if not for Escape, they would have only been down 1%. So flat, down slightly, not too bad. But, I think it's interesting, that story Molly wrote. I mean, we had a 16.2 million SAR in May. It's really not that bad. As she wrote, like there's a lot of warning signs out there, but the industry doesn't seem to be affected by it as much. And you talk about Ford. Ford says for all this talk of affordability concerns and rising prices, most of their customers don't really care that much. They're still buying big trucks and SUVs, and they're not defecting to smaller products, even though Ford's cutting those options. They still have some smaller products. They're not moving there. They're still buying those well-appointed F-150s and Expeditions and Explorers. So as long as that holds out, the market's going to continue to do well. Ford still says we could reach 16.5 million vehicle sales by the end of this year. That would be an increase over last year. So the sky isn't falling, according to them. And we're seeing that in the numbers month after month. Yeah, maybe a small fluctuation here or there, but all things considered, not that bad.
Mike, as we mentioned, Ford had a tough May overall, but there is some Ford news this week that is a bit more upbeat. Now, the 2027 Bronco Filson, a collaboration with an outdoor clothing brand, starts in the mid $70,000 range. Raptor tuned V6, premium leather seats, first ever ventilated front seats on a Bronco. Ford is clearly going after the Land Rover and Mercedes G-Wagon class territory. What's the play here?
Kel, you're a Seattle boy at heart. You have any Filson jackets in the closet?
You know what's crazy? I actually do. I have one, and I haven't worn it in 5 years because I live in the dead of the desert now.
This is not bad stuff.
It's good stuff.
This vehicle looks pretty nice. Now, there's no actual Filson products inside of it. A lot of it's Filson inspired, quote unquote. But this is Ford seeing an opportunity in the off-road market that they haven't tapped yet in the 6 years Bronco's been back. And that's the premium side of the market. You referenced some of the players there. Now, I don't know that this is going to get them there. Even the chief engineer told me, he said, well, we'll be in the same zip code, quote unquote, as a G-Wagon, for example. So again, I don't know, there'll be a lot of cross shop, but they see there's opportunity to make more margin on an insanely popular product that they've had for the past half decade plus. And this vehicle seems to check a lot of boxes for the off-roaders. Now, anybody who drives a Bronco or a Wrangler, a Jeep for that matter, you know they're loud. It's not really a pleasant driving experience. You're doing it because you want to have that vehicle at the destination, at the trail. They're trying to make the driving experience getting there better. They reduced noise by 20%. I'm not really sure the metric that they started from, but they say it's a lot quieter. That Raptor engine you mentioned, it's still going to give you the same acceleration and power as a Raptor, but they basically detuned it to make it quieter. So a lot of nice leather wrapped accents. It seems like it'll have a market for sure.
And Ford just had that other event with Carhartt. That was for the F-150, right?
Super Duty.
Yeah, these two collaborations that are, kind of similar.
Yeah, every company wants to have authentic branding, marketing experiences with partners where it makes sense. And for Ford, they say Carhartt, a workwear brand based in Detroit, makes sense with Super Duty, which is like the workhorse of his truck lineup. A lot of blue collar workers taking that on the job. Filson and Bronco, a premium Bronco. Filson sort of a premium outdoor clothing, jacket, hat experience. They make fly fishing bags when you're going out camping on the river. So they like to think their Bronco customers would be inclined to purchase a Filson jacket.
Mike, you wrote a column about this, specifically that there's a Lincoln angle here. What's that all about?
Yeah, I'm telling you, producer Jake might want to clip this for social media because I have a take.
All right, let's hear it.
No, seriously though, when was the last time we talked about Lincoln? Either on this show or just for those who are listening to this podcast in general. When was the last time Lincoln was super relevant? It's been a while. And listen, I've been on that journey with them. I've been covering this company for over a decade. In the mid 2010s, they did sort of come back from the brink. They had really nice vehicles, excellent interiors. They had this whole quiet flight DNA that they built the brand around. EVs sort of undercut them because every EV is quiet, even if it's just a base mass market product. But anyway, they've kind of stagnated since the pandemic. Yes, the new Navigator is really nice. They lost the Corsair. They're down to 3 products. So I think Lincoln needs a shot in the arm. They need a showstopper. Ford's saying There's a lot of opportunity in the premium off-road space. That's what this Bronco Filson's supposed to do. I'm saying use it as a test run to do a true G-Wagon fighter, make it a Lincoln brand 4x4 body on frame off-roader. Let's do it.
But when I think of Lincoln, I think of Cadillac, I think of luxury, right? So do you think that's a little outside of the scope for Lincoln to go into the off-road space?
It would be, but that's the point. They need to do something. They were celebrating a couple years ago that they finally surpassed 100,000 sales units. It's small potatoes. They need, like I said, that jolt of adrenaline. It's not in their wheelhouse today. That quiet flight, quiet luxury idea is still guiding their designers. But you mentioned Cadillac, Lincoln. It's not just luxury, it's American luxury. Maybe redefine what American luxury means. What outside of the luxury market, what does American mean for vehicles? Large trucks, SUVs. Again, the off-roading space is insanely popular. More and more people are getting into it. Do a luxury off-roader. Now, it's not going to be as capable as a Bronco Raptor. Maybe it would just be for show, just like truck buyers don't do truck things. I'm sure, G-Wagon buyers aren't going off-roading constantly, but this could scratch an itch that Ford seems to think is out there. And like I said, I think it would get a lot of people talking, which is what Lincoln needs.
Yeah, I see where you're going with it. I think thinking about GM in comparison, GMC is not the level of luxury that Lincoln is. I mean, Cadillac would be more of a comparison, but the GMC Sierra, I think, is pretty, premium or like a luxury version of a full-size pickup. And, they market that as it can be an off-roader. Same with the Hummer. When I went on the Hummer drive, there was an off-roading course that's much more rugged than probably anything out of Lincoln might be, but it shows that these like really expensive, high class, like refined type of vehicles can do that potentially.
Now, I see the skepticism in Kel's eyes.
Yes.
I see that he's not buying it. Go ahead.
Because when I think of of off-road Lincoln vehicle, I'm like, oh, we're making off-road vehicles now for boomers. I remember, and producer Jake, correct me if I'm wrong, this might have been 4 years ago. We had interviewed the lady that was I did an interview with the lady. She was the head of the marketing for Cadillac. And this is when they were going to put the lyric out and do that whole thing. And I specifically told her, I was like, you guys are trying to make me not think of my grandfather when I think of a Cadillac. And she goes, no, you're exactly right. She goes, we're trying to get this younger audience. Their commercials were for the lyric were very colorful, very had EDM music, and was trying to gain this younger audience. Now, I feel like if Lincoln were to do something like this, that would be the route they would have to take. Because when I think of Lincoln, and I think most people, when they think of Lincoln, they think of old folks. You think of your grandparents. You think of your parents, your aunts and uncles, right?
Got two things for you. One, what if I told you the youngest buyer for Lincoln, or the vehicle that attracts the youngest buyer, is their biggest vehicle? It's the Navigator. So yes, the young buyers are already interested in maybe something a little bigger, maybe a larger SUV. But again, I don't think this is that far-fetched, because what if I told you this almost happened 4 years ago? Here's a little reporting nugget for you. I never did a story on this because we needed to firm some things up. But according to people who were in the room, Lincoln executives showed a group of dealers a bunch of future product, some of it which has come to pass, including that new Navigator. In the corner, there was a very clear boxy SUV. It was under a silk, and they never removed that silk. And the only thing, I don't know if they just meant it as a design exercise to say, hey, here's what we're thinking about, or if it really was a sneak preview. But it was very clear to the dealers who saw it what it was. It was a Lincoln Bronco Lincoln, whatever you want to call it. Even if not a Bronco, at least a boxy off-roader. Apparently, Lincoln didn't do it at the time because the top brass within the company didn't think it fit with the design ethos of Lincoln. But what I'm saying now, Jim Farley has the no boring products mantra. Lincoln has a new president who told me back in January he wants to take the brand in, quote, a more exciting and emotional direction. I think this would fit.
All right. Hannah, Mike, this was great. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kel.
All right, that's all for this Weekend Drive edition of Daily Drive. Thanks to Automotive News executive producer Jake Neer for his help on today's podcast. You can get the latest news on the UAW strike, USMCA trade negotiations, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoyed the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.